What secret do you want to confess that no one else knows about? Let's find out. Story 1. Lately, I've been disturbed by how impossible it feels to experience any sense of drive or enthusiasm in my life. I've spent years chasing education, working internships, freelancing, constantly updating my portfolio, and I feel absolutely numb toward all of it. That emptiness really worries me, but I keep wearing the "everything's great, I'd love to work with your team" mask because that's what everyone expects during the job hunt. It even bleeds into my personal interests. Well, what used to be hobbies. I barely enjoy any of it now, and that realization unnerves me deeply. Edit. For those asking, yes, I've been diagnosed with depression and ADHD, along with a couple other things. I've tried therapy, medication, and meditation, but none of them really helped. I know they can be useful tools, but they never actually erase the problems you're still dealing with. As for meds, I hated the side effects. Most just left me emotionally flatlined. I actually felt more human after quitting my last round of antidepressants. For context, I'm currently freelancing while job hunting, and have been since just before I finished my grad program a month ago. I admit some of this might be tied to how difficult it's been to land a full-time role in my field. Ironically, that delay might be a hidden blessing. It's giving me space to explore alternate careers that might fit better than advertising. That said, nothing's clicked yet. Story 2. A few months ago, my wife was unfaithful. She says it was only a kiss and a few inappropriate messages, but only she and the other guy really know how far things went. Looking back, I ignored red flags I should have paid attention to, and I regret that now. I haven't told anyone about it. It happened around 4 months ago, and things are complicated. We're in the middle of buying a house, and we have 2 kids. I initially chose to forgive her, and we started trying to rebuild. The thing is, she and her sister are planning to go on a cruise this November, and I don't trust her. Not even a little. I feel like I'm trapped. Edit. I talked to her this morning, and she seemed more focused on saving our relationship than going on the cruise. She even said she planned to call and cancel it today. A lot of people suggested divorce, and honestly, I understand why. I'm not sure if that's where we'll end up, but I'm still trying for now. Sometimes, things aren't as simple as they seem from the outside. Story 3. I'm not happy in my marriage, even though I still love my wife. If we met today, I doubt we'd even go on a second date, let alone tie the knot. But the idea of leaving her just to chase my own happiness makes me feel physically sick. She constantly tells me how much she loves me, how I make her life better, how she couldn't imagine living without me. And I love her too. But we've changed so much. We married young, believing God brought us together. The adults around us urged us to wait, but our pastor and we both felt certain. We did a ton of premarital counseling, so the foundation is strong, but we've slowly drifted apart. Politically, personally, even in the little things like shows, books, and beliefs she doesn't even realize I've shifted on. There's hardly any overlap left. We still enjoy anime together, and sometimes listen to audiobooks she chooses before bed. I've tried suggesting others, but they never work for her. We haven't been intimate in months. She recently told me she's aromantic and doesn't care much about physical intimacy. I'm completely different in that area. She's unemployed right now, and our finances are strained, but I still encourage her to buy little things for her hobbies because they help with her mental health. Despite working over 50 hours a week, I do most of the cooking and cleaning, again, mostly due to her depression. But I still love her. I'm just tired. I feel like I give more, and while she appreciates it, I know I enable the imbalance. She finally started therapy recently thanks to a shift in our finances, but I can't afford one for myself, let alone for both of us. Edit. I didn't expect this many replies. I'll try to respond when I can. It helps to talk. A few people asked about her identifying as aromantic. She says romantic content makes her uncomfortable, but she still likes cuddles and kisses. So, I don't think she's fully aromantic. She knows she's not contributing equally, and it weighs on her, which just worsens her depression. I'm not blaming her, but it's still true that I carry more of the load. She's trying to grow, and that's a huge reason I've stayed. We both agree we need couples therapy, but it's just not financially doable right now. Even just being able to say this here has helped me stay afloat. It's not therapy, but it's something. Story 4. I had a 2-hour online exam for college, where we were required to stay on camera the whole time until the last person submitted their test. The issue? About 30 minutes in, I had a massive stomach emergency and couldn't get up. If I moved, everyone would have seen what was going on. So, I sat there frozen until everyone finished, the instructor closed out the session, and we were finally allowed to turn our cameras off. I ended up getting a perfect score. Edit. Appreciate the responses. It really was one of the most humiliating things I've been through, and yes, it was during a psych exam. A few of you asked questions, so, yep, this actually happened. Apparently, something similar happened to someone on a talk show, so I'm relieved I'm not the only one. I'll have to look that up for a laugh. The cause? I'm very lactose intolerant and accidentally used a milk-based creamer in my coffee. The aftermath was brutal. I had to toss my desk chair and take a very long shower to clean myself up. My stomach's always been sensitive, and sadly, this wasn't even the first time. The worst was during a Bible study years ago, but that's a different tale. I was majoring in psych then, and that's still the field I work in today. Story 5. The only person who ever knew what happened to me, being tied to a bed for 3 days, assaulted, and subjected to horrors I can't even describe, has been gone for 10 years as of last Monday. That person was my dad. He came home unexpectedly early from a trip and walked right into what was happening. His ex-wife, who had left her 15-year-old daughter in charge of watching me while she was out of town, had no idea he'd return that day. I was just 5 years old. That night, my dad called his ex-wife back to the house. What followed was absolute chaos. He erupted in fury, physically attacking her while her daughter, the one responsible, sat in silence and witnessed everything. Story 6. In my close-knit group of friends, all of whom are in long-term relationships, I'm the only one who's single. I've honestly never been in a relationship that lasted more than a couple of weeks. Being part of a couple has always seemed tiring, so I never really worried about rushing into anything. But I didn't fully realize how lonely I'd become until one night in particular. We were playing beer pong, and I got paired with one of the women in our circle who'd had a few drinks. After I landed the final shot, and we won, she hugged me. That small hug hit harder than I expected. It made me realize that since leaving for college, I haven't really had those comforting, physical moments I used to get as a kid. I didn't know how much I missed them until that exact second. Story 7. About 10 years ago, I had a head injury that resulted in a concussion and wiped out most of my episodic memory. Over the past decade, I've managed to piece back some of it. Faces I once knew, bits of information, feelings I had towards certain people. But the actual memories themselves are mostly gone or show up in vague flashes. It's tough, especially since I used to have a nearly photographic memory. Now, I can't rely on it for much. I rarely bring it up because I don't want sympathy, and even more than that, I don't want judgment. Once, I was waiting for the bus when a guy came up and greeted me by name. He clearly knew me, asked how I'd been, said it had been ages. I didn't recognize him at all. When I explained the concussion, he got upset, accused me of lying just to avoid conversation, and walked off angry. I don't ever want to experience that kind of moment again. Story 8. My final semester of college was completely thrown off by the pandemic, including a capstone project I had been building for years. To make it worse, the person I thought I'd marry broke up with me the day before I left campus for the last time. A couple of months later, every single one of my friends stopped reaching out. I gave therapy a shot, but the therapist seemed more interested in telling stories about her own life than helping me with mine. Over the last year and a half, I've lost more relatives than I can even count, some to COVID, others to unrelated causes. That includes both of my grandparents and my 16-year-old cousin, who tragically took his own life. I've never felt more alone. Most nights, I fall asleep quietly wishing I wouldn't wake up the next morning. Story 9. One night while out on my delivery shift, I suddenly had to pee badly. It hit me so fast I didn't even have time to find a bush or pull over somewhere discreet. About 20% of it ended up in the driver's seat before I managed to grab a container and finish the rest there. Since we were allowed to take the delivery vehicles home, and I only had 14 packages left, I just drove back, scrubbed the seat thoroughly, and then delivered the rest early the next morning. All the parcels were stored in the back, and no one else drives my van, so there wasn't any risk to anyone. Still, I was so annoyed with myself. At least nobody saw it happen, unlike the time I threw up out the bus door while dropping someone off back in 2007. Story 10. I was born with a condition called Klinefelter syndrome, and as a kid, I always wondered why my body looked different or why certain things didn't seem to line up with other boys my age. It turns out I have an extra X chromosome. Growing up, I had to take testosterone injections since my body doesn't produce much naturally. I didn't even hit puberty until halfway through high school. Eventually, I shot up in height. I'm now 25, 6 feet 5 inches, and have broader hips than most guys I know. Facial hair? Barely any, maybe 5 or 6 strands on my chin. They used to mess with my self-image a lot. I'd ask myself, who could ever love me when I feel so flawed? But over time, I've worked through that shame and learned to accept myself. Everyone hides something, and I'm not embarrassed about mine anymore. Edit. Since people asked, no, things haven't changed much physically down there since I was a teen. It stayed around 4.5 inches when fully aroused. I'm open to questions if anyone wants to talk or share their own experiences too. Story 11. Over the past couple of years, I genuinely thought I was losing my mind. I didn't know what was happening to me, physically or emotionally. I felt constantly sick, constantly drained. My anxiety and spiraling thoughts led me to destroy one of my closest friendships, and to this day, I still haven't found the courage to explain what was really going on. There were times I truly felt hopeless. Eventually, I was diagnosed with both cancer and an autoimmune disorder, both of which were affecting my body and my mental health. I'm getting treatment now and feeling much more stable, but I still haven't found the strength to reach out and tell my friend the truth. I know it wasn't entirely my fault, but I hurt someone I deeply care about. Saying, sorry I was sick, feels far too small. If you ever see this, I'm so sorry. I really wish I could make it right. Story 12. My parents used to drag me into their arguments constantly. I knew way too much about their relationship issues, and sometimes I still hear my mom yelling even now. She still argues late into the night sometimes, over things that spiral into never-ending rants. They don't realize how deeply that affected me growing up. I learned things no kid should ever know. Now, I deal with pretty bad anxiety, mostly because of how my mom still latches onto every negative thing and treats everything like it's a crisis. There's no sense of calm, ever. It's always chaos. They weren't always like this. They used to be more normal, but over time, politics crept into everything and now it's all doom and disaster. I just wish they'd stop obsessing over the worst possibilities, stop watching the news constantly, and take a breath. I wish they could enjoy something, anything, for once, and stop dragging me into their mess. Story 13. My headaches are actually caused by severe tooth pain, not migraines like I used to think. It's intense, borderline unbearable, but I haven't gone to the dentist in years because of a traumatic experience I had as a kid. The thought of even calling to make an appointment sends me into a panic. On top of that, I've been depressed for so long that I stopped caring about oral hygiene. I gave up brushing regularly, and now my teeth are in awful condition. What makes it worse is knowing that if I go in, I'll probably hear the same speech. Why didn't you take care of them? And I'm not ready for that. Edit. I didn't expect anyone to read this, but I'm overwhelmed by the response. I'm working on getting Medicaid. Someone told me it covers dental care. Others mentioned there are kind dentists who won't shame me. I'm trying, but I'm unemployed and broke, and as anyone in the US can understand, that makes things even harder. It's just a broken tooth right now, no infection or abscess, but it makes my whole head throb. I got some OTC painkillers from the pharmacy which help a bit. I'm still terrified. I cried writing this, but I want to be around for my child. I don't want this to turn into something worse. Thank you all for the encouragement. Story 14. I grew up in a home with a toxic marriage, so I guess it's time to share my story too. Maybe someone out there will relate. My dad would never openly admit to being suicidal, but there was a time when he made dark jokes about it constantly. On long drives, he'd explain, very calmly, why ending his life made logical sense. He said the life insurance would help the family, that it would be his final act of love. Then he'd spiral into everything going wrong, his injury, his stalled career, dropping out of college, my mom's infidelity, the mounting bills. When I cried and begged him to stop, he'd suddenly act like he was joking and say he'd never leave us. But then, while speeding down narrow country roads, he'd swerve toward the ditch at the last second, then yell at me for reacting, like I'd insulted him by being scared. I was only about 10 at the time. I wasn't equipped to carry that kind of emotional weight, especially when it came from a parent who used me as a dumping ground. I often wondered if we'd die in a murder-suicide. If someone plays mind games like that with you, they'll eventually do the same to their children. Things will escalate, it's only a matter of time. I'm in my 30s now, and still coping with PTSD. Please don't let it get that far. Leave before the damage becomes permanent. Story 15. I'm a pretty decent guy overall. My wife makes sure our home stays healthy food-wise, balanced meals and all. But every so often, I get this uncontrollable craving for greasy comfort food, burgers, fried chicken, chips, Doritos, you name it. When it gets too strong to resist, I make up a reason to go out and run errands. Then I drive alone through the shopping plazas near our side of town, where all the fast food joints are. McDonald's, KFC, Burger King. I search for whichever one lines up with my craving. Once I've made my choice, I park in a dark corner of the lot, back into a hidden space, and for about 20 minutes I indulge. It's ridiculous but also oddly euphoric. My mouth becomes a battlefield of cheesy, salty satisfaction. It's a little moment of glory. Then the grand finale, a few freezing cold gulps of soda to seal the deal. And just like that, it's over. I sit in the post-meal silence, maybe have a 10-minute food coma, then quietly pull out of the parking lot and head home. I've been doing this for years. My wife and family have absolutely no idea. Story 16. I smoked for 6 years and finally quit this past Monday. I was heavily dependent on it and genuinely scared of how my mind would react once I stopped. When I didn't smoke, I'd sometimes spiral into really dark, overwhelming thoughts. That first night after quitting was awful. I couldn't sleep until I was completely exhausted. But the last 2 nights have been easier. And surprisingly, I've had fewer negative thoughts this week than I did when I smoked daily. I think smoking gives the illusion of relief, especially when you're dealing with deeper stuff. But in the long run, it makes you avoid actually facing your problems. You end up piling them up, and one day they hit you all at once, worse than before. You keep numbing yourself with each hit, just trying to get through the day, session by session. Try stepping away from it for a little while, see what happens. I still wrestle with purpose sometimes, but I know that's partly because smoking used to fill up a huge chunk of my routine. Now I'm trying to replace that with hobbies or things that really matter. You can do this. I honestly believe in you. Story 17. My brother was murdered in July 2020, and ever since, I've secretly become a functioning alcoholic. I lie to everyone, my parents, my wife, my friends, even my co-workers. I tell them I only drink a few drinks on Saturdays, since it's my only day off. What they don't know is that I've already had 3 drinks before we even hang out. They don't know about the shots I take before work, or the quiet drink I make to go with lunch. I work night shifts, so my wife never sees me stumble in and pass out before waking up just in time to seem normal when she gets home. I always enjoyed drinking, even before he was killed. But now, I'm afraid to stop. It keeps me in just enough of a fog to get through the day. It helps me fake enough happiness to keep relationships alive, the same ones I nearly destroyed after he died. Here's the part I've never said out loud. He called me that day. I was asleep and missed the call. I haven't told anyone. I don't think I ever will. I haven't slept without alcohol since. It's the only thing that keeps the nightmares away. Story 18. I don't want to go to the doctor about my scoliosis because I'm terrified I'll be told I need surgery. And honestly, scared doesn't even begin to cover it. I'm absolutely paralyzed by the idea. That fear is the main reason I keep putting off making an appointment. But there's more to it. I'm also afraid of being dismissed again. The last time I went in, they treated me like I was being dramatic. Even after they realized I was serious, their attitude barely changed. What makes things worse is that I live with pretty neglectful parents. If something serious does come up, I'll have no choice but to lean on my friends for help. And while I know they care, they have their own lives, their own problems, and I really don't want to become someone else's burden. Story 19. My boyfriend had a work trip out of state over Valentine's Day, and I flew out a couple of days later, so we could still spend some time together. Since his company was covering the hotel, we figured we'd make the most of it. Before I arrived, he had meetings and went out to dinner with co-workers. The moment I walked into the hotel room, something felt off. There was this heavy, almost haunting feeling, like something bad had happened there. He told me he wasn't feeling well, so I brushed it off as a cold and focused on taking care of him. But the weird feeling didn't go away. One night, I tried comforting him, being affectionate, but he pulled away and said he wasn't in the mood. I didn't press it at the time. Months later, back home, he left for the gym and forgot to close his laptop. I know I shouldn't have, but I opened it. There was an unsent email draft, like a journal entry. In it, he described how one night before I got there, he went bar hopping with co-workers. One of them, an older man, followed him back to the hotel after he got drunk and assaulted him. He wrote it all in heartbreaking detail. I can't repeat the words, but it confirmed what I had feared. He'll probably never tell me, and I doubt I'll ever admit I know. But I'm grateful this happened before the pandemic. He works remotely now, and never has to see that man again. Story 20. I'm completely stuck financially this month. My husband and I just had our baby 4 weeks ago, and I had to go back to work last week. I'm supposed to get paid tomorrow, but my entire check is going straight to cover our health insurance. That money was supposed to pay for dinner tomorrow, and I wasn't ready for this. Now I'm sitting alone in our bedroom crying, trying to figure out how we're going to afford food and bills for the week. My husband's in the other room, rocking our newborn to sleep. He's on paternity leave and will get paid soon, but not until next week. He was supposed to get a bonus on October 1st, but it never came through. That's why I had to go back to work so early. I feel like such a failure. We thought we had everything planned, but we had to switch from breastfeeding to formula unexpectedly. My supply dropped, and it made our daughter vomit violently. Everything just feels so overwhelming right now. Story 21. This has easily been the hardest period of my life so far. My grandfather was evicted and had to move in with my uncle. They were planning to relocate across the country, and because my grandfather is a hoarder, the process of packing was already beyond stressful. Every weekend, we drove 5 hours to help him sort through decades of belongings, especially things that belonged to my late grandmother. My uncle made multiple trips to the landfill, each about 40 minutes one way. He took my dad, mom, brother, and me on rotation. During those drives, he opened up. He talked about family memories, and even gave me a few personal items: an old pocket knife, a university jacket, a nice watch. It felt meaningful, but also a little strange. After we got most of the house packed, my brother and I returned home for school. My parents were supposed to go back one last time to finish. I said a quick goodbye to my uncle. He seemed distant. I hugged my grandfather too, not knowing it might be the last time. While my parents were driving back the next weekend, they got a call. My uncle had died. They arrived to deal with everything immediately. My grandfather, who still hadn't fully grieved my grandma, was devastated. So was my dad. It was his brother. They still had to finish moving out in 2 days. To add to the emotional chaos, my aunt, who hadn't spoken to us in over a decade, showed up out of nowhere to help. It was helpful but overwhelming. My dad planned to stay a couple days. Instead, he had to take a 4-day road trip across the country with my grandfather and help him settle in for a month. When only my mom came back, I asked where Dad was. That's when she told me my uncle hadn't died of natural causes. He had taken his own life in the front yard. My grandfather had heard the sound, walked outside, and found him there. When Dad finally returned, I asked him about it in the car. He broke down crying. I'd never seen him like that. There wasn't anything I could say. Right now, my own life is chaos. I'm up at 6 a.m. every day, in class by 7, at practice until 9 p.m., then drowning in homework. My grades are slipping. I'm overwhelmed and exhausted. Sometimes I just wish it would all stop. Even a hug would help. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. Story 22. I'm burning out as my wife's primary caregiver. I love her with everything I have. We've been together for 21 years, but I'm just so tired. Still, no matter how drained I feel, I'll keep showing up for her. That won't change. But sometimes I find myself thinking, what if? Mostly, I wonder what might have happened if I'd confessed my feelings to my best friend back in high school. Years later, I found out she had feelings for me too, but by then it was too late. I'm not saying I regret where I ended up. My wife and I have 3 wonderful kids, and we've built a life together. But I'd be lying if I said I never think about how different things could have turned out if I'd spoken up in 1996. It's just a thought that lingers, especially on the harder days. Story 23. When I was around 14 or 15, I was loosely friends with someone who later turned out to be a potential domestic terrorist. We weren't close, but we interacted now and then through a mutual friend who was deep into the darker corners of the true crime world. Her name was Elizabeth. We didn't talk directly very often, but I knew her from a Discord server she ran. It was dedicated to true crime, but filled with people who had some seriously disturbing views. At one point, she mentioned getting interesting letters and hinted that she was working on a big project. Turns out those letters were from Dylan Roof. He had been sending her instructions for building a homemade explosive. She was planning to use it to blow up the bar where she worked, claiming it was polluting a nearby water source. When the truth came out, everyone who knew her was shocked. So was I. She had always just seemed a bit odd, but nothing that alarming. Looking back, I still talk about that time with a couple of online friends. but I've never told anyone in real life. I know if I told the wrong person, I'd probably end up being investigated too. No matter how well you think you know someone online, until you meet them in person, you really don't. Be careful. One wrong connection can change everything. Story 24. I often feel incredibly inferior to my closest friends, and I honestly don't understand why they still include me. Deep down, I know they care and could have easily drifted away by now, but they haven't. I live the farthest from all of them and don't get to hang out much because I have a kid. They're all way smarter than me, and they make significantly more money. It seriously confuses me that they still want me around. My dad always said I have a likable personality, and I've been with my wife for over 15 years now. I've never really had trouble making friends at parties or social events, so maybe all of this is in my head. I don't know. I'm on medication for anxiety and depression, so maybe that's part of it too. Still, the feelings linger, and it's hard to shake them. Story 25. I quit my job last week and haven't left the house since. There's trash piling up around me, and I haven't even had the energy to take it out. I haven't showered either. I'm not exactly sad, but I know I'm depressed. I'm angry. I'm full of resentment. Toward friends. Toward family. Even toward strangers. I've been hurt too many times. And even though I tried to move on, I smiled at people, even when they never smiled back. That kind of indifference still kills something inside me. I'm scared I'll never find real friends again. Or love. I don't want to die, but I don't really want to live like this either. I used to be thriving, in my career, in my personal life. I was smart, motivated, attractive, funny, dependable. A great friend. A great partner. But I don't feel like any of those things anymore. Not even close. Let me know when you're ready to move on to story 26. Story 26. I really hate my ex-girlfriend. She was the first person I ever seriously dated. The first person I ever loved. We had a cycle, break up, get back together, break up again. I was always her safe space, someone she could lean on. She came from a rough home and had a terrible relationship with her mom. She'd been through trauma, and I did everything I could to support her. But when I, male, was Yuli assaulted by a co-worker and opened up to her about it, she got angry at me for talking about other girls, even though I was telling her something painful and real. Meanwhile, she always talked about her old crushes and who she was currently into. She got kicked out of her house and I took her in. Eventually, she moved in with her dad. I listened to her vent. I supported her. I even brought her on a family vacation. Then she started dating someone else, while still expecting to come on our vacation, even after I told her she wasn't welcome. I cut off contact that summer. My mom still thinks we'll get back together someday. And truthfully, I do miss her sometimes. But I never want to see her again. She used me. And I don't know if I'll ever feel safe opening up to someone like that again. Story 27. Last January, my dog of 14 years had a severe stroke. I was still in bed when I heard awful sounds, her crying out and thrashing. My parents told me to stay with our other dogs while they rushed her to the vet. When they came back, they said it was time to say goodbye. We all went together to the clinic. I gave her one last hug, one last pet, and watched her slip away peacefully. I was crushed. I kept thinking about how I should have spent more time with her. I ended up burying myself in video games to distract from the pain. The next day, I went to school like nothing had happened. I never even told my closest friends. Rest in peace, Dixie. You were the smartest, kindest dog I've ever known. Story 28. I've struggled with addiction for most of my life, and now that I'm almost 30, I've decided it's time to stop and focus on becoming a better version of myself. My addiction led to PIDE, which made intimacy with my partner incredibly difficult. I felt embarrassed, ashamed. I used to spend hours a day trapped in toxic routines, watching things I knew weren't good for me, trading content, video chatting with strangers. I had basically split myself into two people, one online, one offline. I kept chasing novelty just to feel something. I wasn't even into most of what I watched. It just became compulsive. But none of it reflected who I really am. Today marks 24 days clean. I still get urges, but I'm learning how to manage them. I've started rebuilding relationships, improving in school, and for the first time in what feels like forever, I think I'm starting to experience real happiness again. Story 29. This is something I'll probably never say out loud to anyone, but I just need to let it out. When I was a teenager, I wasn't in a good place. I had dark, violent thoughts, really disturbing ones. I used to imagine hurting people. Not specific individuals, just people in general. The idea of causing pain, of chaos, gave me a rush. It wasn't romanticized or anything like that. It was raw, intense. Once, I even went out with the intention to act on it. I approached someone, but froze. I couldn't follow through. I was furious with myself afterward. Years later, during a suicide attempt, I remember having a similar feeling. This weird adrenaline surge mixed with something much deeper. When I turned 19, I promised myself I'd bury those urges forever. I avoid anything that reminds me of that mindset. I even tried watching Dexter once, but it was too familiar. It triggered a panic attack. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to be that person. But I can still feel the shadow of who I used to be, hiding inside me. Story 30. I didn't study at all last academic year, and I'm terrified this one will be a repeat. Ever since lockdown started, it's like my brain shut off. I can't bring myself to do basic things. Even eating or drinking water slips my mind. Sometimes I miss breakfast completely and don't realize it until someone points it out. It's not intentional, I just never feel hungry anymore. I tried using reminders, but even that only happens on the rare days I feel slightly motivated. I've lost a ton of weight because of it. When people compliment me on it, it makes me feel worse because it wasn't healthy or planned. Even starting a show feels like an achievement. I've only finished 2 in the past year and a half. School has been the worst part. My grades used to be great. They got me into university. If I'd kept it up, I might have earned a scholarship. Instead, I didn't. And now there's even more financial pressure on my family. I feel guilty every single day. I try to take small steps, but it feels like everyone else is so far ahead. If I can't do something perfectly, I feel like there's no point in doing it at all. I know a low grade is better than nothing, but my brain still chooses nothing. I've tried talking to my parents, but they just call me dramatic. On top of all that, I'm scared of how they'll react if they ever find out I'm gay. I worry I'll never get a job, never live on my own, never be accepted. And if I can't have that, what's the point? I don't want to die, but I don't want to exist like this either. Story 31. People know bits and pieces, but not the whole story. I'm a short woman, just 4 feet 10 inches, and it's taken a serious toll on my confidence and self-worth. I've always felt like I'm too small to be truly desired. Like something's off. Like I'll never be seen as beautiful or normal. I've been trying to heal those thoughts for years, and I've made progress, but it all comes crashing back whenever a guy only shows interest in me physically. It chips away at me every time. I crave emotional connection, but I often end up in situations where I settle for brief moments of feeling wanted. Instant gratification. Then I get hurt, because it was never real to begin with. I give so much of myself to others, and it's exhausting. Recently, I've been working on setting better boundaries. I'm focusing on improving myself, my fitness, my personality, so I can feel like I'm enough on my own. But it's hard, especially when I'm constantly around people, and my height makes me feel self-conscious all over again. I know this might seem small compared to what others are going through, but I don't know when, or if, I'll ever stop feeling less than. Story 32. Lately, I've been struggling a lot emotionally. Ever since I was a kid, I've had this nagging feeling that people don't actually like me. They just tolerate me out of politeness or obligation. Right now, I'm working with a group of people I used to consider friends. In some ways, it's comforting because we already have history. But the truth is, I know they hang out without me. And I know you can't force anyone to include you, but it doesn't stop me from wanting to be included. The pandemic made it hard to stay connected with people, and since this group is part of my testing cohort, they're the only ones I can safely spend time with. But even then, I still feel like an outsider. I don't feel like I can talk about it either. Every time I brought up feelings like this in the past, it's just made things more awkward. So I bottle it up. I smile. I pretend everything's fine. But it's not. Story 33. I'm doing okay now, but a few years ago, I attempted suicide and ended up in the hospital. I used to think about it constantly. Even now, the sound of my parents and brothers crying still echoes in my memory. That moment changed me. Depression makes you blind to the good things you have. It made me overlook how much love and support my family actually gave me. But I've come a long way since then. I'm moving forward. I've taken accountability in my relationships, owned my past mistakes, and now I focus on what's ahead. I've spent time getting to know my body and my mind, how they work, how they shift. I've found healing through better food, supplements, and hormone treatments. I'm not depressed anymore. I've reclaimed control over my life. To anyone still struggling, life is brutally hard, but it's also full of reasons to keep going. You can grow through this. You can learn. You can thrive. You just have to hold on. Story 34. I don't want to be the rock of my family anymore. I don't want to be the dependable one. I just want to feel loved. I need someone to hold me and tell me it's okay. My parents have been arguing for as long as I can remember. Their marriage is broken. My mom doesn't even cook for my dad anymore, yet still takes grocery money and somehow always plays the victim. When I try to express how I feel, she threatens to hurt herself, bangs her head against the wall, so we all stay silent. I want to scream the truth, but I can't. If I do, everything might collapse, and I'm not emotionally strong enough to handle that. 7 months ago, I broke up with my ex, and it shattered me. I felt so guilty, like I didn't give her proper closure. I imagined her hurting while I was hurting too. So I reached out. I helped her find peace. But it tore me open all over again. Now I feel completely lost. I have dreams, I have goals, but I feel like I'm at rock bottom. To cope, I go on long drives with no destination. I make impulsive choices that mess with my future. I stay up all night overthinking. I've never touched drugs, alcohol, or anything like that. I try to be kind. I try to be honest. I give people my heart. But it feels like I always get hurt in return. It doesn't make sense anymore. Sorry for the ramble. I just needed to let it out. Story 35. Even though she genuinely loves me, I honestly don't feel much affection toward my mother. She had me when she was 16, completely unplanned. My father, who checks nearly every negative box imaginable, left her to go on a date with his girlfriend the night I was born. She bounced from one family member to another until she eventually found my dad's parents. They agreed to help raise me under the condition that she finish school and prove she could take care of me one day. The last time I visited her willingly was about a decade ago, during summer break in high school. She's made some improvements, but she still moves around constantly and tends to show her true, unpleasant side once she gets comfortable. She sends me sweet Facebook messages every few months, asking how I'm doing, saying she misses me, hoping I'll visit. Right now, she lives one state over, about a 4-hour drive away. I tell her I miss her too, but truthfully, I only say that so she doesn't feel completely alone. She only raised me for the first year of my life. After that, my grandparents took over. I have no connection to my father anymore. He caused major rifts in the family, and I don't even know where he is now. I wish I could feel something for her, but I don't. And when she acts overly affectionate, it just makes me uncomfortable. I plan to move to Japan in a few years, not just because I love it there, but because I want a fresh start. I want peace. The hardest part is knowing I don't want to take any part of my old life with me, unless I absolutely have to. I've considered telling her how I really feel and cutting contact, but mental illness and suicide run deep in both sides of my family. I just can't take that risk. Story 36. I'm generally a very open person, and I'm in a committed relationship with someone I truly love. But I still find myself having occasional guilty, romantic, or flirty thoughts about other people. It's something that's happened to me even before this relationship. I've never cheated. I've always set clear boundaries with others. But I still enjoy the feeling of someone flirting with me, and sometimes I catch myself getting wrapped up in it more than I should. It's confusing, because no one knows me the way my partner does. No one could ever replace the connection we share. Still, I carry this quiet guilt. My partner believes cheating is a clear deal breaker. He's talked about it openly. In fact, he cut off a lifelong friend who cheated. We sometimes joke about past relationships or playfully tease each other, but his loyalty is unshakable. And that scares me, because I don't know if I'm as unwavering as he is. I've had this happen in other relationships too. I've never told anyone. It feels wrong to be committed and still have these thoughts. Maybe I'm being too hard on myself, but the shame is real. I'm not really looking for advice. I just needed to put it somewhere. Story 37. I've been battling self-harm relapses for a while now. A few months back, I managed to stay clean for 108 days, but after I slipped, I haven't been able to go more than a month and a half without doing it again. Right now, I'm 12 days clean, but the urge has been eating at me for the last half hour. It's loud. It won't let up. My boyfriend is the only one who knows, and he's the biggest reason I'm trying so hard to stop. I hate lying to him, and it hurts knowing it pains him when I admit I've relapsed. He's supportive and kind, but I know this weighs on him too. I used to rely on small, disposable razors, but I threw them away to help myself break the habit. Now, I can't even shave properly. Worse than that, I've started imagining using anything sharp I come across, box cutters, scissors, even knives in the kitchen. It's hard to ignore those thoughts. Honestly, I'm writing all of this just to distract myself. I also think about my youngest brother. He's my best friend, and sometimes he's the only reason I keep holding on. There've been some rough days lately. I've had suicidal thoughts, but I haven't acted on them, because of him, because of my boyfriend, and even because of my pet rat. It might sound silly, but he's close to me, and I could never do that to him.